In July 1974, a crowded lakeside park near Seattle heard one harmless request. A polite man with his arm in a sling asked women to help him with his boat. He said his name was Ted. By sunset, 2 young women were gone, and witnesses were left with a picture that made no sense. The suspect was calm, neat, and strangely ordinary. This is the story of Ted Bundy, not as a legend, not as a dark celebrity, but as a warning about the danger of trusting a mask. Welcome to Crime Unmasked. Tonight, we step into 1970s America, where investigators chased a predator who did not look like the monster people expected. Theodore Robert Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont, in 1946, and grew up in Tacoma, Washington. To people around him, he could appear intelligent, helpful, and ambitious. He studied psychology at the University of Washington. He volunteered on political campaigns. He even worked at a crisis clinic, answering calls from people in pain. That public image became part of the horror. Bundy understood how appearances worked. He knew that confidence could silence suspicion, and that charm could open doors. But behind the clean smile, a pattern was forming. In early 1974, young women in Washington began vanishing. One of the first confirmed victims was Linda Ann Healy, a University of Washington student who disappeared from her home in Seattle in February 1974. More disappearances followed. Students. Young women on ordinary days. Lives interrupted without warning. Communities that once felt safe began checking windows, changing routines, and whispering about a stranger no one could quite describe. Then came Lake Sammamish. On a summer day in July 1974, witnesses saw a man calling himself Ted. He wore a sling and asked for help loading a sailboat. It was a performance built on sympathy. Janice Odd disappeared. Later that same day, Denise Naslund disappeared too. The investigation now had a name, a sketch, and a chilling possibility: the killer might be hiding in plain sight. Tips came in. Some people who knew Bundy thought he looked like the sketch. But the idea seemed impossible to many. A law student? A political volunteer? A man who sounded educated and respectable? That disbelief gave him space. In 1974, Bundy moved to Utah for law school. Soon, new attacks were reported there. Again, the method relied on manipulation. He used fake authority, fake injury, and fake trust. One survivor changed everything. Carol Duranch was 18 when a man approached her at a Utah mall, claiming to be a police officer. He said there had been a problem with her car. She went with him, but when he tried to restrain her, she fought back and escaped. Her courage gave investigators something Bundy could not charm away: a living witness. In August 1975, police stopped Bundy in Utah. Inside his car, they found items that raised immediate suspicion, including handcuffs and other tools. The mask was beginning to crack. In 1976, Bundy was convicted of kidnapping Duranch. But even behind bars, the story was not over. Colorado wanted him for another murder case. Bundy was extradited, and in June 1977, while preparing his own defense at a courthouse in Aspen, he jumped from a second-story window and escaped. For nearly a week, the man America was slowly learning to fear disappeared into the mountains before police captured him again. 6 months later, he escaped a second time. This time, he lost weight, slipped through a hole in a jail ceiling, and vanished from Colorado. The escape was more than a headline. It was a failure that carried consequences across the country. Bundy traveled under false names and eventually reached Florida. In January 1978, violence erupted near Florida State University. At the Chi Omega sorority house, 2 young women, Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, were killed. Others survived serious attacks. A nearby student was also attacked that night. The details were horrifying enough, but the deeper fear was this: Bundy had escaped custody, crossed states, and continued hurting people. Less than a month later, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach disappeared in Lake City, Florida. Her murder would become one of the cases that sealed Bundy's fate. On February 15, 1978, a Pensacola police officer stopped a stolen car with its headlights off. The driver resisted. When the officer finally subdued him, the fugitive's name came back into focus: Ted Bundy. This time, there would be no escape. The trials that followed became a national spectacle. Cameras entered the courtroom. Bundy argued with attorneys, cross-examined witnesses, and tried to control the story the way he had tried to control people. But a courtroom is not a stage forever. In 1979, Bundy was convicted for the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy and sentenced to death. In 1980, he was convicted for the murder of Kimberly Leach and received another death sentence. For years, he denied what he had done. Then, shortly before his execution, Bundy confessed to 30 murders. Investigators have long believed the true number may never be fully known. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair. He was 42 years old. But the case did not end with the execution. It left behind questions that still matter. Why did so many people underestimate him? Why did a confident smile make danger harder to see? Why did the image of a respectable young man blind people to the evidence in front of them? Bundy's crimes haunt America because they attacked a belief that evil always looks obvious. The truth is colder. Predators can study our expectations. They can copy politeness. They can borrow authority. They can turn trust into a weapon. That is why this case should never be remembered as the story of a charming killer. It should be remembered as the story of victims, survivors, missed warnings, and the mask that fooled a nation. If this case shocked you, the next one begins in another shadow: a quiet killer, a trail of women, and a city that did not know a serial predator was hunting close to home. Subscribe to Crime Unmasked. In the next episode, we uncover the Green River Killer and the investigation that took nearly 2 decades to break open.